Yes, whatever.
But it's doing it again.
Or is it muted again?
Yeah, that's.
That's a lot.
That's 3 kids.
Two other spouses Saturday there, so.
Let's see, 5, 6, 7, and 7, 14 total.
Starting to.
He said them.
Around in your court. Here at my house, so. I got my cake baked today. It's like, yeah.
Is that a tradition to bake a cake?
No, I do it once in a while, but I make a pound cake and have this cream cheese garbage bag.
Ooh.
So maybe that's today, then I can get to start on everything else. And then turn on the stuff.
And
Well, that's.
still, working on each one.
I've got to give it out.
I was gonna ask you how you'd handle that.
And then switch it, and then we'll just switch it back. That's basically what fixed it the other day in the other room.
I think, Sean, you'll get a kick out of this. I don't know your family makeup, but Jim has some adult granddaughter.
We know I have to use that.
And then his own daughter has decided she's completely vegan. One of his granddaughters is gluten intolerant. So anyways, a couple of Thanksgivings ago, he went to Great Plains. He made like 3 versions of almost everything. Oh, and then another family won't eat any onions. Well, let's face it, onions are pretty integral to food stuff, right? So he went to all of his length to make the
Cheese.
I'm
I
not.
told her, I said, the same rules that I had them cry every
Yeah.
That's quite a.
I know.
You just never know. Then she's like, oh.
Did anybody have a Thanksgiving?
I'm like, yeah, see, that's why you try everything.
Well, good, you did her a service. I know, it wasn't. And Mills?
See it. Okay, so
If we set it to this, it won't pick up anything remote, it will only pick up links.
I'm gonna sit next to Mike.
So we know that works to make it show up, but it shows up wrong.
I love it.
I don't know.
We had a rule.
We might have to do a ticket, maybe they'll learn to do a test, but I don't know why this is wrong every single meeting.
Really?
Cause I feel like there's 3 choices and every meeting we're like, no, it's this, no, and then all of a sudden it starts working.
Yeah.
Much nicer.
If you change, I think you have 2
Good,
changes
Scott, you doing good?
every 6 months.
Yeah.
So you couldn't just wholesale change.
Money on the ground.
So they always put stuff in.
Maybe on Mike, just
Getting it
maybe
and turn it off.
they changed something on that.
So they didn't like stuff. I have to admit, I always like stuff.
Yes, yes, we are.
Anywhere near that.
I mean,
I
we
told
can
my
put it
kids,
to
well,
this,
don't-
but
don't
the problem
make
is the
girls
bench
sit
will
there
vote on
with
Zoom.
it.
It's not
Well, and I think that's like,
Yeah, they're in the front row.
that's just something that we've heard, and everybody says, you know, it sounds like that could be.
Today, so let's
Sounds like
do that.
rights.
Huh?
They can't, they have rights.
Catch it now.
It's been allowed right.
Whether I'm used or not, so.
Yeah.
I'm saying whoever you want. Yeah, yeah.
There's a property line right now that's like right here.
When you turn 18,
Thank you, Bob. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Today is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. Thanks again for being here. We'll start off quickly with a review of our business item agenda, which will be very brief, as a matter of fact. So due to today being the election, the finals for the election, we're gonna try to hold things as brief as possible. We'll do a pledge. I'm going to actually, I don't know how many people will be here for citizen comment. I'll limit it probably to 1 or 2 comments is all, if there are anybody at all to comment. And then we have one legislative action item to vote on tonight, which is consideration of ordinance 405, adopting the transportation master plan element of the general plan. Mike, do you want to briefly, is it?
Matt. That would be Matt, yeah.
It's
That's
okay.
The transportation master plan
Okay.
that's been presented.
But I can just
Yeah,
say.
do you want to go for
Yeah,
that?
we reviewed this at the last meeting, walked through it, had the public, last couple of meetings, we've had the public comment. Planning Commission reviewed it, and took quite a bit of time to review it. And had a unanimous recommendation of approval that they forwarded to you. And so, after the public hearing last week, we're putting it on the agenda for formal consideration.
Okay.
So.
Any questions, comments from the council? No, okay, so we'll vote on that and then hopefully be able to get to our events tonight quickly. Okay, we have 5 different staff reports for today. And we'll begin with item 5A, which is a continuation of the Wasatch Boulevard master plan discussion that we've held previously. So this time, Mike, I'll turn the time over to you.
Okay,
if that's
Thank
okay.
you. I appreciate it, Mayor. And this can be pretty quick. I only have a couple slides. I went back and re-listened to the last discussion we had on this, which was back in August of this year. So I won't rehash a lot of what was talked about, but the emphasis of those discussions was to talk about some of the references in the plan, not the entire plan, but in certain sections of the plan that when it was recommending certain cross sections and making recommendations for adding capacity on Wasatch, there's language related to what you use that added capacity for. We had a long kind of conversation that the intention of the plan is to use the added capacity in a, not just a reactive way to hold more cars and kind of status quo widening of the roadway, but if and when widening is warranted, to do it in a way that prioritizes transit or HOVs or something like that. So this is just kind of the bullet points of what I overheard from that discussion and then listened back again just this morning to make sure I understood and remembered correctly. So there was discussion particularly on this cross section and on one of the sections of the plan that relates to this and kind of explains this. So we discussed the current plan language regarding that expanded roadway capacity with the flex shoulder space. The flex shoulder space being the lane that you see the bus in here. There's a ton of little small wording in there that basically says, hey, use this for transit or bike lanes in non-peak hours, but it also has a reference that cars can be in it during peak hours when more capacity is needed. And there was some back and forth on that. We discussed that the plan does prioritize transit in that added capacity. and recreational on-street bike lanes in non-peak hours. And then, like I said, open to vehicles during peak daily travel times. The plan also states that in the future, that flex space could be used as a future dedicated bus or BRT type lane. Again, the takeaway there is the intention of the plan is for that space to be flexible, for us to come up with a creative approach that's not just add a lane for more cars. There was also discussion about the desire to add more specific references to roadway design and aesthetics as part of the plan's design speed recommendations. There's language in there today about design speed being a factor in reducing roadway speeds, but there were some conversations about, more strict references to landscaping medians and what kind of treatments we see on the edges of the roadway to further enhance that not only the aesthetics of the corridor, but the design speed of the road in a way that reduces traffic speed. And then that was conversed for a while among the council. The final consensus was to analyze potential changes, and the language we used was massage the current language to respond to the concerns and the points that were talked about, without limiting our ability to remain flexible and creative with future opportunities within the roadway. So I didn't hear consensus on, hey, eliminate any reference, say don't use this extra lane for cars at all. The takeaway was, hey, let's massage that a little bit to even further downplay that and emphasize slower design speeds, transit, things like that. What we're here for tonight, and then I'll let the council discuss, is a formal direction on whether to formally open this up and start the amendment process, which is not just the amendment itself may be quick and simple, but it has to go through public input with the planning commission and hearings and noticing, go through that process, then come to the council for recommendations. It'll take a handful of months to get through that process, even for a simple amendment. If we were to go that direction, and if that's the direction the council wants to go, the approach that staff would take based on the August 1st direction is here. We would further clarify that the use of expanded roadway lanes is not prioritized or necessarily even intended to be used for single occupant vehicles. We'd remove that reference from the cross-section diagram to just make that emphasis a little more clear. And we could reword relevant sections to emphasize that regular vehicular use of the lanes is kind of the last priority of what we want to see there. Another thing I'd recommend doing is incorporating more specific references to the design at the corridor.
I'm sorry, but I need to ask a clarifying question. What you just read through there, that it's not intended to be used for single occupant vehicles. What's the relevance of that? How would we ever control that?
That was the council. That was just me typing words in a presentation, but the council direction was, hey, we don't necessarily want to say no cars in this lane, but we want to make clear our intention is to be flexible and use it for transit. So I don't know what the exact wording would be, but it'd be to say, the reason this is in the plan is not to just allow more cars in this. So, whatever that looks like in the final plan, I don't know, but the emphasis and the priority and the goal is that additional capacity is for transit HOV type uses.
I see. Thank you. Okay.
The plan as it's currently written also allows for those same items.
The plan as it's currently written largely does that, but it does include references to say, hey, yeah, it could also be used for cars during peak hours. So we just reworked that language. And then another thing I would do is incorporate the aesthetics plan, the corridor aesthetics plan that UDOT did. The graphics there on the left come out of that. They don't recommend any sort of cross section, and you can see in that full plan, some of their designs show 4 lanes, some show 2, and they say very clearly in that plan, this is not a cross section widening plan. This is just, hey, what are some aesthetic design recommendations that could enhance safety, enhance mobility for all types of users, and potentially even reduce speed through the design of the roadway. There's some really good graphics in there. So I think we parse through that and include some reference to that as well.
So since it's important, if we were to go to the trouble of reworking the Wasatch Boulevard Master Plan from 2019 to take into consideration all the things that are afoot, I'll say, coming our way, WFRC, UDOT, in the WFRC meeting that Mike and I participated in just over a week ago. It was their annual meeting. Everyone was invited, but at any rate, at that meeting, I know my council colleagues were not able to attend, but they talked about, UDOT brought out that they are now calling their concept of what meets the safety action plan. They intonated that. Please jump in if you think I'm misinterpreting what happened at that 2-hour meeting. But they have come up with a term that they call family friendly. And they had Hugh Van Wagenen standing next to a screen, and he was showing pictures of various streetscapes. And he wanted everyone in the audience, which was made up of all the municipalities in southern and what they now call the southern section of Salt Lake County, to call out, is this family friendly or not? And where vehicles were driving, in essence, over 30 miles an hour, and he didn't get into exactly how fast all the speeds were, but his point, Hugh Van Wagenen's from UDOT, excuse me, from WFRC, his point was that where there's vehicles driving at the speed that Wasatch Boulevard currently is, 50 miles an hour, this had to be a hardscape to be considered family friendly. And that is what Hugh Van Wagenen claimed was the goal for both UDOT and WFRC, was to see municipalities creating roadways that were considered family friendly. And so my concern is that these drawings are not family friendly.
This is one element of it.
Hardscape.
The family friend, that was in regards to active transportation, and the family friendly element is there's 20% of people that will never use a bike to get anywhere. They're just never going to do it. There's roughly 20% that will ride on any road. They're fearless, and then there's 60% in the middle where if it was safe, that's your family friendly route. That's what all these regional plans target, is how do we get those people that would use it if it was safe to use it. The key thing there is separating the facility from the roadway. I mean, that's the number one key. And our Wasatch plan does that in these cross sections. You can see that's in there. Now, it's not in UDOT's record of decision to have a shared use path on both sides, but it is in our master plan.
Well, I guess what the slide that you just showed here is not family friendly.
Right. This is to feeding into bullet point number 2, that UDOT has actually done some work post adoption of the Wasatch master plan to show how aesthetics can make a difference in a roadway design to achieve the goals in our Wasatch plan that say, hey, we want this to be a unique corridor. So it may not cover all of these elements, but that wasn't within the scope of UDOT's plan. So I think if we incorporated these by reference, we'd do so in a way that's saying, hey, these are ideas for how to maintain that kind of mountain character of Wasatch Boulevard in a roadway design, regardless of what the final design looks like.
And UDOT has adopted those?
UDOT, they don't have a formal adoption process for their plans, but they funded the study and they did it here. So
was it based off Wasatch or just general?
Yeah, it was specific to Wasatch Boulevard. Yeah.
So they've done that and they've got that on. Okay.
Yeah. So the extent and how that gets incorporated, that's undetermined at this point. But
well, I'm just saying that if we were to go to the trouble of redoing our Wasatch Boulevard plan, we would not have these kind of pictures in that plan because they are not meeting what our goal is and what UDOT and WFRC has stated is their goal, especially with regional roadways that have cycling and pedestrians, to strive for. There has to be hardscaping, separating bicycles and or pedestrians where cars are moving over 30 or 35 miles an hour.
That would be up to the council.
Well, I guess my point there is that's not here. That's when, if we go through, this is not currently in the plan.
No, this happened after.
If we go, and what I'm asking is if the current plan allows for what we want. That's why I said that's UDOT's things and they're going to reference what they want. And we certainly can be supportive of whatever they're doing. But when we get to the final, I guess when the final design comes out, that would be UDOT's thing. We'd have input on it, but it's not going to be dictated by us.
Well, I think the whole point, though, of going to the trouble of a new Wasatch Boulevard or revised Wasatch Boulevard plan is to state exactly what we want. So I'm uncertain
Yes,
why
but
we
at the
would,
same time,
why
it
would
can't
we
be
strive
so,
for
it
something?
can't be so narrow as to put us into a corner where there's no options for us to move or negotiate or discuss.
The plan
Yeah.
still references separated bike paths, right?
Yeah, I think the plan does a pretty good job of being a high level master plan, understanding. You go from the high level master plan and you implement, you get more specific as you get closer to implementation. You want some flexibilities built in there, but if it's completely veered off path of what the council's priority is, then that's when you would want to amend that overall overarching document.
Well, respectfully, it was John Thomas, who was the project manager for UDOT in 2019, who said of our Wasatch Boulevard master plan, you are not telling UDOT what it is you want. So I respectfully disagree that our master plan should be so vague and broad. I think we need to
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You said it should be that
It allows for flexibility. It's a high level plan, as a general plan is, as an area master plan is. And as you get closer to implementation, you specify some of those things where it says, we want slower speeds through design of the roadways. Here's some ideas. We throw out things like roundabouts, chicanes, different ideas. We're not saying do all of these. We're not saying we want this one over this one, but we're saying we want slower speeds and here's some ways we think you could achieve
okay,
it.
well, as a legislator, I am going on the record saying that our Wasatch Boulevard master plan especially through the Golden Hills and Bengal corridor should be very specific about what it is we want within that 2.6 mile stretch.
So I just want to say the goals that are established in that plan, I would disagree with what John Thomas said. The goals that we talked about in that plan are fairly specific. That we want reduced speeds on Wasatch Boulevard, that we want separated paths for people to ride and to walk. There's a lot of specificity in that plan that I think says exactly what we want, and it's something that we've conveyed to them in our public comment related to that. I think we've been pretty darn specific in both our letters and the plan as to what we want on Wasatch Boulevard.
John Thomas was a big part of the plan development. We had regular meetings with UDOT. Is there the key stakeholder in that process in terms of jurisdiction over that roadway? So he was involved in the whole plan the entire time. So I'm not questioning what he said or anything like that, but he was very involved. UDOT was very hands-on in that project. So this is kind of the takeaway. The other thing we would add is we'd reiterate some of the comments we made in our EIS public comments in an updated plan. Like, hey, the idea in our public comments that roadway capacity should have some sort of trigger metric. We shouldn't just go widen if we don't need to widen. We can throw some things like that back into the master plan. I don't think we need to, but if we're opening up the plan, it doesn't hurt to. Changes more extensive than this are going to require staff time and potentially resources. If you're wanting graphics and updated renderings and things like that, we can't do those in-house. The idea of coming out of the council retreat was to make some minor tweaks to certain sections as it related mainly to this cross section and the use of the expanded roadway. That being said, I'll turn it back over to you. It's up to you, council, what you want to do with this. If it's a simple amendment, we can get to work on that. If it's more extensive, then we would need to prepare something come back to say, here's what it would take to get this done.
Councilor Newell, any thoughts?
I like the fact that there's flexibility built into this. We're not locked in, and I like the direction that it's going. I think all parties involved understand the safety factors and the speed factors and all those things. But I really like the fact that we can continue conversations about this through that flexibility to be able to get to a better place where all parties can come together and find something that works for them. But when it comes down to it, the reality is they're going to do what they decide to do. And we have to do it. We have to give our input in a way as we see in a positive fashion so that we can actually maybe influence some of these changes that we may want to look at. But overall, for me, I'm really happy with the direction it's going in. And I just love the flexibility. If you have flexibility built into these types of conversations and initiatives, then you can work through some of the more difficult things.
One of the specifics that we want to probably give staff recommendations today is the language specific enough that we are de-emphasizing car usage in that HOV lane. I know, Mike, you kind of think that it's okay how it is, or are you recommending?
Yeah, no,
those changes?
I think it's good how it is. There are sentences in the plan that say that lane could be used for cars during non-peak hours. That's in there. I'm not shying away from that, but there is a lot of reference to say capacity needs to be added thoughtfully and with transit and reducing vehicles on the road in mind. It says that over and over again throughout.
Those statements are in there as well.
Consistently, yes.
I mean, I agree with what Sean said. The flexibility is nice, and that's why I asked my questions the way I did. Even last year, I think the plan as written has the flexibility and the design. It conveys a lot of those things. I do have concerns with getting overly specific and overly demanding to where we, at that point where we may not be as well received or seen as intractable. And that's definitely things that you don't want to have when you're dealing with other agencies. You get a lot more accomplished if you're able to negotiate back and forth. I think they're willing to work within those needs, and if we can get the same things done. I mean, there's a couple things here that are of value, but does it warrant a complete change or not? That's personally, I would
I
not
mean, I
do
guess
it.
we need to make the decision.
But
Is there anything specific that we want to make changes, or do we stand pat? So I mean, I don't mind that a stronger language that it's an HOV lane. So we don't have to include pictures that don't show that the active transportation paths aren't separated. So, I would probably wouldn't be in favor of adding those pictures in either, because I think we could probably, do our own drawings or that get us what we want, or they probably exist out there anyway. But the question is there something that we feel strongly enough as a council where we have a majority to open it up to make some changes?
So if I may have my turn, I appreciate that. So some observations. The record of decision has already come out for Wasatch Boulevard. The Bengal Hill Golden Hills corridor has been designated by UDOT as a 2-lane imbalance. The 2-lane imbalance does not have any HOV lane. It likely will have some kind of shoulder on either side of intersections to allow buses to be prioritized to get in front of the vehicles. But it really renders the language in our 2019 Wasatch Boulevard plan somewhat irrelevant, because UDOT has stated that their preference is for a 5-lane imbalance, which would be 2 vehicular lanes in either direction with a center median, but they will phase in initially a 2-lane imbalance. And they have cited in their ROD that is based on southbound commuters. So what they have in mind is 2 lanes going southbound through the Golden Hills Bengal corridor. And when they get to the High T intersection, those 2 southbound lanes have to both merge into a singular lane to go right onto the part of Wasatch Boulevard that is owned by the city, which is, in my view, inherently flawed. That will create a bottleneck. And I think that those who have analyzed this plan see, and if we had the project manager here at the table, he would say, oh, yes. And then, the other purpose that the 2 southbound lanes, they'll actually go beyond the High T intersection now. In the ROD, we changed it. They'll go into the new parking garage. They have in mind the 2,500 parking garage, which is about another 1/4 mile beyond the High T intersection. So respectfully, I think that some of the suggestions made by the staff are inappropriate. I really like the idea that Mike Johnson brought up about saying that the city is asking for metrics. We want regular traffic studies done by this state-owned route. The last traffic study that UDOT did was pre-COVID. We've gone through a new trend, more home officing. There is currently not a level of service lower than level C, other than on the ski snow mornings. So There are a number of factors that we have an opportunity to address, in my opinion, in not the entire Wasatch Boulevard plan, but the portion of the Wasatch Boulevard plan that deals with the 2.6 miles of Wasatch Boulevard from the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon to just beyond the High T intersection. That is what we call in our master plan, the Bengal Golden Hills corridor. I would also point out that coming right out and saying we want a 35-mile-an-hour road design, the residents of this area did a petition at the year in early 2019, asking for 30 miles per hour from where motorists are getting off the I-215. They wanted 30 miles an hour through what they called the Gateway section. The Gateway was all of State Route 190 to the mouth of Big Cottonwood and continuing through Cottonwood Heights. They wanted that all to be considered a gateway at 30 miles an hour. So even settling, so to speak, for 35 miles an hour is not too big of an ask, in my opinion. Everything I've studied, even our initial meeting with the new Region 2, I should say the Region 2 director of UDOT, who now will have a much more integral role than he did prior to the record of decision in August. I would also say that it's extremely important that during peak times, private vehicles cannot be allowed to flow through there. That defeats the whole incentivizing of transit. So also, I think that we can reconsider whether we really want these kind of ultra wide footprint, and see if we can't come up with something that is much more focused on reduced or not expanding, I guess is the word I want, not expanding the volume on the roadway, because there's not been a traffic report done in the last 10 years that would support or even project through 2050 the need for such a thing. There is not commuters creating a level of service worse than level C ever. It's not proven. So between those items, give me one moment. I think I hit all the ones I wanted to. I highly urge the council that we should not be complacent at all with this. This is an opportunity to really state what our city wants for this very important area. And I urge my council colleagues to work with staff and with the residents of the area and with UDOT. I do not think that it's offensive to UDOT to ask for reports. In fact, I really commend the mayor. He has been vocal asking for, when it comes to the ski season challenges, for measurements, so that when UDOT, when they decide whether they're going to definitely implement the gondola, that this phasing is being measured to see what the true volume is on our roadways before they would move ahead with this 2,500 parking stall garage within our neighborhoods. I mean, asking for metrics is not asking too much. I don't think there's anything that would be considered.
I'm sorry, but you covered so much. So many different, no, I'm sorry. I don't even know where to begin.
Good,
because
there's a lot to do.
No, stop and listen, please.
I am listening.
Okay, again, as I said to you in the last meeting, 75% of what you said, I just flat don't see that I don't agree with. I see the points that you're trying to make. They don't go through it. I don't see that we're dictating to UDOT at all. I say the plan as it is written can accomplish all that. When I have said in the past that you seem to be just bent on getting rid of cars, period, at the expense or to the benefit of others, that's exactly the type of thing that I mean. There are places where people need to be able to go. I recently posted things where I asked the question, are these things you want, or are these the things you want? And 3/4, 80% of them are saying, no, we still need to be able to get places in our cars. So as we do need to accommodate that for the future. Metrics aren't bad. But to say everything you just said and to say, and then so we have to do metrics, that there's a disconnect. I do have experience as a legislator in getting to be overly specific or not specific enough. You've got to be careful. That's why, again, I agreed with what Sean had said. I think the plan can accomplish what we need to do. That's why I expressed my confidence in it at the beginning of the year, and I still have confidence in it. I think as things move forward, as they progress down, we can the city will be at the table, and we'll get those things taken care of. I didn't make a list of all the points where
Tim, did you have some comments?
Yeah. A couple of things. I think, so having been through the majority of the process with the master plan and the public input on that, which was extensive, it was multiple years. And moving through all of that process and getting the recommendation, to me, our input to UDOT is layered. This is an important layer, which took 2 years of a lot of public input on that. But there's about 5 other layered points that we've been providing input. And when we provided during the ROD process, record of decision, 2 memos in addition to our master plan, that was the layered input. In addition to that, we did a resolution that got specific and said, we want the speeds reduced to a certain level. That was a layer of it. Our continual meetings with UDOT is another layer of that public input. Quite frankly, I think all of the layered amounts of work that we've done on this, we haven't been complacent. We've been very, very diligent in providing that input. And it's going to lead to hopefully our input in the design phases of whatever they do with the road. My point is, those elements of layers, I think, gave us the public input that we need, that provided specificity, but also flexibility. And if you reopen this all up, I don't know, with the master plan, the question is, do you really want to open that part up again? I would recommend not doing that because of all the layered approaches we've already provided input on. And now the rubber is going to hit the road when we sit down with them on design phases of this. And that's where we're going to really have to have the input that's needed. So that's my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
so
So,
said that better than I did.
so, I think part of Councilmember Brecken's perhaps frustration is, specificity. So because where we are in our council today with some changes coming up, I'm willing to bring this up as a retreat item again, only with absolute specifics of what requested from any council members to be changed. So I don't want to approach this again as a general discussion item, but if we can come prepared to that retreat with specific changes that we can consider as a council, yes, we'll move forward on A, no B, yes, C, then we'll go forward. We're not going to get anywhere because of the changes that are coming anyway with this council. So if that's okay, we'll make that a retreat item. And request that any council member can come with specific items that they would like to see changed, and then we'll discuss it at the retreat, if that's okay with the council. So. Okay, thank you for that discussion. Let's move on to item B within staff reports by B, which is also a continuance from a previous discussion on a possible ordinance to allow citizens to request snow removal and road maintenance for private access easements that are owned by the city. I know we've talked about this multiple times as a council. We requested the staff to come and give us some background on what they think cost would be and other items. So it looks like I'm going to turn this over to Tim first, and then we can have Matt weigh in as well.
Yeah, so if you looked at the memo that I provided, we were asked in the October 3rd meeting to come back with a couple of important points as you evaluate this. And once again, these are private access easements that we own, but they are for private purposes, and I've outlined that in the memo. So the two things were the costs of what it would take, what we would estimate on costs, and then also talking with our insurance provider and what the liability would be on these. So we sent information to our, I'll get into the insurance first, to the Utah Local Government Trust, had them evaluate this. I appreciated they didn't just, they engaged an attorney, an outside legal counsel to look at the issue. The outside legal counsel in the communication back to us informed us that they confirmed that if it's an access roadway located on city property and it only benefits abutting property owners, that under Utah state law, it is their responsibility to maintain. That was the first part of what they, the second part was they did state that if you begin any maintenance on this, including snow removal, that it will expand your liability for those sites. So that was their response to us on that. Then we went into evaluating, and I appreciate Matt and his staff because they took a pretty detailed approach in looking at what we would estimate the cost would be on this. They took kind of what the square footage costs are related to how much, what we budget, what we expend for snow removal on our roads, and narrowed it down to basically a 10 cent per square foot cost. So if you take 35 snow events per year, and by the way, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, we were at like 59 or 60.
About 60
But
events.
the average is about 35 that we have, between 35 and 40, right, Matt?
Yeah.
Between 35 and 40, if you take the square footage of the four, there's really four public or private access easement areas. We calculated the square footage at about 14,000 square feet.
Is this specifically Timberline?
No, it's the four, if we took over the four private access easements.
Are they listed here? There's,
All of them in the city?
Yeah, so
They're in
it's,
the
it's
attachment.
Mill Lane, it's the ones that are in the attachments. It's
And
Mill
is that
Lane,
what-
Timberline, East Golden Hills Canyon, and then the Wasatch Boulevard 3500 East. It's four areas.
And are these rights of way what currently would be considered the road or the lane, or are they
Ownership, property.
It's
They have
a
property
piece of the
ID.
property that we actually own?
Property ID.
Correct.
Correct.
Whether that happens to be conformed to current ways we would have someone build a road.
It's property. It's not a road. It's property.
yeah, so
I
it's
mean, if we were to build a road, we probably wouldn't have sufficient property
Correct.
to build that road.
If we were to
With my
build it
point
to
being-
current standard.
These
Correct.
square footages are quite a bit less than it would be if it was an actual public road that we had built.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Anyway, you see in the memo, it's about 14,400 square foot with these four properties. The cost we estimate would be around $50,000 if you had 35 snow events. Then if you went beyond that, if it was not just snow removal and there was slurry and crack seal, because we have had requests for that as well, and potential reconstruction, it would be in the $4,000 just for the slurry and crack seal work, and then a reconstruction is much more extensive than that, about $115,000. Once again, that isn't every year, of course. That's whenever it is needed. But anyway, those are the costs. That's the liability issues. That's what we were asked to come up with and bring back to the council. So that's.
I have a question on the Golden Hills Canyon Road. The area that's demarcated is only between the first two houses on that private road. So the private road is a continuous, it appears to be a continuous private road that goes on up and around. So I was just curious why, I
Yeah.
guess if you show that up here, I can share with all of the council. But I didn't understand why it appeared to be only between these two residents.
That's the property.
Yeah, that's the
just our
property
property.
that we own as part of that.
The
that
road
access
going up
easement.
and beyond is owned by the property owners above it.
Right, but my understanding of like Timberline is that we own that entirety of the roadway till it dead ends. So I just don't understand why in this case So if we agreed to maintain, then we would only maintain
That piece.
that little piece and they'd still be hiring somebody to do all the other. The other one I don't understand entirely is the one at the corner of, on the south side of 3500 East where it tees into Wasatch Boulevard SR 210. There's no, to my recollection, that is where the UTA bus
Correct.
stop is. So I don't understand what we'd be doing there.
Snow plowing. I get requests every year by those residents that we maintain that because we own it.
But isn't that just a dirt lot? I don't,
It's a paved, the old 3500, from what I can tell, used to go through there. That's paved through there.
but no
it's a
vehicles
lot.
drive there. I'm just trying to understand what we're
There's
talking
a
about.
resident, there are two residents that live off of that.
That live off of that right there.
It's pictured in there. Go down,
Well, I'm looking at it. I don't see any residents there.
But
there's a driveway
I
right
mean,
there, there's
this-
one behind the bus stop.
but in reality, this. We need to be careful about getting to the specifics of this particular thing on these, because it gets to be a general, more broad policy
Well,
decision
I,
on. I mean, there are explanations. The reason is, for example, with the timber line, the way they platted it, it was a separate plat. No one paid the taxes on it, so the county got it by default. So it came over to us. That's probably
Yeah.
what happened.
no, but okay, so if I may.
Again, it's-
These folks that live
Don't worry
here,
about
their road, they get to it from this cul-de-sac. And the people, the house that he is here, they come right in off of, there's no houses that access through that demarcated magenta area.
it doesn't change the fact that it matches the other areas in the policy that we're discussing.
It's on 35.
And the policy that we're looking to set or change or keep
Where it tied.
applies to that parcel as well.
So
That's why
Shane,
it's not just as simple as saying, we'll do it here and ignore the others. It needs to be consistent across them all.
let me ask you a legal question. So if the residents, so part of the frustration for the residents is they, this was initially owned by an HOA, was defaulted, now they don't own it. If they didn't want it to be considered a private access easement anymore, is there a process for that where they could, it wouldn't be deemed private access?
There is some years ago, I'm thinking, I don't know, 2014 or so, 2016-ish, something like that. The council went through an extensive discussion about, was it 70th South, Scott, some portion of 70th South?
It's 70 or 72, but yeah.
Which was a private road that was in deteriorated condition, and they wanted the city to take over maintenance of that. The road was almost unusable, and they wanted the city to just come in and fix it and take it over. And so the city council adopted a provision of our transportation code, which allows a private roadway to become a public roadway under certain circumstances. It's going to be a council legislative decision, but one of the prerequisites is that the residents have to bring the roadway up to city standards before the city will do that. So in that case, that is what that's what happened, as I recall. They were able to bring it up to city standards, and I believe the city took over that roadway. In that case, however, the roadway had sufficient width, and in some of these others, as I understand it, the roadway doesn't have sufficient width to become a city roadway. So yeah, there is a process, but it isn't an automatic. It does have to go through an upgrade process, and then it comes to the council for a decision as to whether the city council wants to take it.
Matt, is Timberline the only one that's too narrow?
The golden, what's the name of it?
Golden Hills.
The Golden
Mhm.
Hills is also would not meet that requirement.
And we've had other PUDs who often do a smaller road and do that. I mean, Bengal Boulevard on just below Danish Road. Back in the day, those owners, the Hansons, And others all own to the center of the road, like we have with the creek. That's where some of them may still, but they have the easement that goes across them. And that's, this one that Ellen was asking about was the same kind of a thing. That piece, for whatever reason, didn't get the taxes, so it kind of defaults at. There wasn't any active part on the county or the city to purchase it as though they wanted it. That's just kind of the default that happened. We have, Shane's right there, I think it's 72, but it could be 70th south there. It's just west. If you go down there by the church, you go down that first road. That's the one that it is. That had to go through some a complete overlay and some other things. The city was able to help. We found Granite did some experimental stuff on there, was able to get a very reasonable price for them to do that. The Timberline one, this one, to get the width, you'd be looking at taking out a lot of front yards. And then you'd probably be creating some non-compliant front setbacks. The other ones, I don't know. So we have had this type of discussion before. I think the one that Shane mentioned is probably the only one we've actually gone through all the way and adopted. Lexi Lane came and asked us about doing it, but that was actually a fairly recent development. And it's like, well, if you wanted it to be a public road, you should have just built it it was like within 5 years, you should have just built it as a public road.
Yeah.
But the answer was, okay, same thing, build it, bring it up to city standards, which again gets hard in a PUD because they tend to make the roads a little narrow. My other perspective on that is the 10 or 12 years that I spent with Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling, where you're taking large vehicles, the size of snow plows and larger garbage trucks up and down those narrow roads, and it is a significant amount of liability if your drivers make any kind of mistake. Plus the wear and tear from the larger vehicles is significantly more than passenger.
And that actually, Scott, adds to the uniqueness of this. There's a fire hydrant up there on this private access easement. Shane, if one of our UFA trucks went up there to put out a fire and damage the road, who's liable?
I think it's going to be, it just depends on whether there's negligence or not, and UFA would probably have a exculpation under the Indemnity Act for that sort of thing. I don't think it would be a city responsibility. However, that's having a fire hydrant to service nearby residences is just part of it. It's just a development requirement, and so the city doesn't take ownership of the roadway just because they have put in a
Is there
fire
hydrants in Giverny?
Yes.
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay, well, who owns those?
Salt Lake owns them,
Yeah.
the water system.
Okay, so it's part of the water system, it's not,
Correct.
okay. I was gonna ask, I knew there wasn't any in Kavachi because we required them to be, they got required.
What I was saying is that if UFA is negligent in accessing the fire hydrant, why then, UFA may theoretically have some liability, but
But you'd always be the case.
they likely would be exculpated under the Indemnity Act. Or the Immunity Act, rather, sorry.
That makes, that's just one I had never. Apparently Salt Lake Metro owns the fire hydrants.
I wouldn't have known that.
Well, I've been doing this 19 years, and that's the first time that question came up.
We own the fire hydrants in public right of way. They belong to the city. We don't own the
Okay.
water, and we don't maintain them. We have a contract to maintain them with Salt Lake City.
So it's not outrageous to have believed that the city owns the fire hydrants.
We own all the fire
ones that
hydrants,
are-
and
Okay.
the ones inside the PUDs are owned by the PUDs in Salt Lake.
You learned something.
Yeah, okay, well, more clarification. I don't know if there's a clear path forward on this. It's just fascinating. I love to help people. That's why we really took this job. This is just such a complicated issue.
It is, and that's why we did we did help those residents on 7200 South, whatever it is. Work with Granite to find a way to make it within their means. There were some that just did not have a lot.
And we loaned the money to them and took a lien on their house so they could pay back over time. And so the city did what it could to
I
help.
mean, when the trailer park down in, or mobile home, I was politically incorrect there. When they were being evicted because the land was being sold, we also went out of our way to find help and aid for those people. We couldn't stop the sale, we couldn't prevent that, but we did what we could to get there.
Yeah.
But I think we should always be willing to accept the request to make something a public amenity, but we need to be careful when we do so. I think the requirement to bring it to the specifications that we would have dictated or built it to is important. That's usually the one that kills stuff, because that's expensive.
If I can jump in, otherwise it's just too easy for a developer to come in, say, okay, I'm going to do a PUD that allows for a private road, which is narrower, has been mentioned, so that I can maximize the number of lots and maximize the value that I'm getting. And then keep the road and then just stop paying taxes on it. Then by virtue of state law, it goes to the public, it goes to Salt Lake County, and then Salt Lake County says, why do we want this? It's in your jurisdiction, Cottonwood Heights, so you ought to take it. And that's exactly what has happened in most of these places. And so unfortunately, the decision of what some of these roadways was made many years ago during development, and it becomes a little difficult to change what they are unless they can be brought up to standards.
The future, Mike, do we have the ability to change the PUD requirements for roads to match what our requirements are?
Private road standards in today's code generally do. Where you can vary is in the sidewalk curb and gutter treatment. Step in if I say anything wrong. And then we don't inspect during construction on private roads.
The other thing, some cities don't allow for private roads anymore in subdivisions.
Yeah.
There are some that just have said
Yeah,
no
you
more
can
private roads because
Put that in your code.
you almost always get residents 30, 40 years down, or maybe even 10 years down the road, come back and say, we want the city to take this over. And so some cities have just said, we're not going to approve, it has to be a public road for a subdivision period.
That actually,
Or you require them to build it to the full standard, and then if they want a PUD, that's fine. And then if the residents change, then it's already.
and if
built.
they're gonna do that, they're probably just gonna turn over the city anyways, because why would
Yeah,
they?
it doesn't save money or for the
Right.
developer.
Because then the city does maintain it, and the garbage's pickup is easier, and the mail pickup is easier.
Right.
It's, but yeah, when because we're in an aging city, and some people didn't ask those questions when they were, I did have a former, with all due respect to any realtors or developers that might be listening, who said, I would never go, I'm not gonna go I'm never gonna go purchase my home. This is the planning director in a PUD.
Yeah.
That was just hardcore. And I says, really, and explained why. And this was really one of the compelling reasons why. And when my son was looking for his house, I said, well, just be cautious of this and this and this and this and this. Make sure you ask the questions, because it's not an easy thing to be in that situation and want more and not be able to get it because of a decision you made 5, 10, or however many years ago when you buy your house.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for that discussion. That's very informative. So we're gonna move to item C, which is a Crestwood Park discussion. So I'm not gonna give a whole lot of background. I'm just gonna turn it over to our city manager, Tim Tingey, and let you do that, and we'll see where we want the discussion to go.
Okay. So we have had some conversations with Salt Lake County public officials. They are in process of developing a Crestwood Park master plan. And with that, it may change some of the amenities over in Crestwood Park. Right now, there's a public swimming pool that is utilized by primarily the people in the neighborhood around Crestwood Park. And if you recall, a couple of years ago, there were a lot of residents that were concerned because the county was wanting to shut down that pool and not operate it anymore and incur the cost for that. The county made the decision after quite a bit of public outcry to keep the pool in place and keep operating it. But now they're working on a public master plan. There's a likelihood that they may want to phase that pool out. We haven't seen the official master plan. We've only just
They've
had.
suggested it 3 times in the past,
And they
So,
suggested
at
three
least 3 times.
Okay, so anyway, obviously, Matt Holton with District 1 has had a number of residents talk with him about that. We've involved Ben Hill. I think Ben Hill's on just watching this, appreciate him supporting this, but so there will likely be a lot of concern with that. We wanted to bring it to the council to make you aware of these concerns, make you aware that there is likely in the next couple of months, potentially, they'll be announcing what the master plan shows and what they would do with the amenities. And we'll probably get a lot of public input on that. So we wanted to begin, just make you aware of that and then just have a brief discussion on your thoughts. There is the possibility that the city could look at working with Ben Hill and his organization. If the city wants to take that over, we would have to get costs and really evaluate that significantly because there'd be ongoing operating costs plus costs for maintenance. There's probably future conversations with county council members and the council and as a whole on whether that's feasible for us to take that over or whether they would give that to us, which is likely they would. But anyway, we don't have a lot of specifics. We just wanted to make sure you were aware that this is out there, and we'll probably start hearing more about it once that master plan is unveiled.
I expect that master plan will come out. It wouldn't surprise me at all that might be recommended for closure. Again, they have recommended it. Pools are expensive and it is a regional park in the county's thing. So it's supposed to be drawing from a larger area, but the reality is where it's located, how it's located, it is a little more one potential. And I hope Ben doesn't slaughter me tomorrow in our meeting for suggesting such a thing. One potential, if the city wants to do the cost analysis for taking that particular thing over, a funding, I misspoke, the city, a potential funding source for that would be the annexation of those properties south of the creek into the service area, into the Comma Heights Recreation Service Area. The question being is, would that generate enough funds to keep that open? And would that be enough of an incentive for those property owners to want to annex in? In the past, that has been more expensive than the extra costs involved in just paying the out of service area fee. I don't know, that's something that we'd have to ask them and see if that would be sufficient. They might do it if it helps them keep their pool, and if the rec center, the service area is willing to do that maintenance and upkeep for that revenue.
Yeah, let me add as well to that, Scott, that the county's actually been very amenable to input from us on this specific plan. I've had multiple calls from county council members, saying, hey, do you just want to take over the pool? No, we fix it first and maybe we'll talk. But anyway, so
on a similar note, if it were the city, although it makes more sense for the service area to do it, the city could also create a special service district.
Yeah.
I don't know if the service district can create a special service district, but the same kind of a thing. There needs to be some sort of funding mechanism to going forward to fix, repair, and maintain that, because there's a good reason you don't see pools in private fitness centers.
Yeah.
Because
They're very expensive.
it costs a lot of money to run.
Well, and in addition, your comment about the residents voting to go into the recreation service area, that is a process, and it's a pretty high threshold. You have to get a fairly high number of residents to agree to that. But yeah, it's something that maybe we'll have to have future conversations.
That's voted with your pocketbook.
Yeah.
I really like Councilman Bracken's suggestions, both about the consideration and thought about annexation and or a special service district. And then the other piece of the puzzle, I sat in on the Crestwood Park master plan initial draft, or whatever you want to call it, that was given to the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee a month or so ago. And so the other thing that came out was that the pool has gotten more and more dilapidated. So it's not really just O&M, right? It's that the county is like egads. We've put this off kind of as long as we can. And I don't know when it was last, but that's the thing with swimming pools, every so often, right? They have to have a major overhaul. So if it's the cost of the major overhaul as well as the ongoing O&M out into the future.
I think they did some significant repairs on it, but it's been more than 10 years. And it was, I mean, they did what they could, but it was not dig it out and build a new one.
I have just one other quick observation about the master plan. One of the deliberations that came out when they talked about what percentage of people put input into the survey about what they wanted. There was, like, I believe, if memory is serving me, 19% of the survey participants wanted a disc golf course, which I thought was kind of fascinating because of the vast amount of acreage there in Crestwood that's non-landscaped and natural, thank you. And so a lot of disc golf courses, in fact, are based on natural. It's not landscaped, and the little discs are about this big and they're thrown. Anyways, I'm generally an advocate. Anytime we can provide recreation that gets people out and moving about, it's healthy. And if it appeals to different generations and people with different interests, it's quieter than golf. If you get hit by a little disc, it probably is going to kill you like a golf ball can. And it's quiet. And anyways, I just want to go on record that I was a little disappointed that both the county representative and seemingly the PTOS committee was okay with the idea of basically feeling like this 19% was not representative of the citizenry at large, and that should be disregarded. So I don't think it's making it through. And I frankly have disc golf courses that I've walked. I think Crestwood would be a wonderful spot for such a thing. So
Well, we will have a lot of time to, I think, discuss, as this is going to be an ongoing item. I think as soon as the county make some decisions, and we'll be involved with them. So thank you. Appreciate that discussion.
And there, it'll continue to be there. They're not interested in giving up the whole park.
Yeah. 100% true. Okay, item 5D is an item we've also discussed multiple times this year, which is the possible implementation of the municipal telecommunications franchise tax. And just to be a little specific on this item before we turn it over to Scott, this is, the state approves taxation options for cities. You don't have to always opt into them. This is one of those items that they have allowed us, or a municipality to levy a tax through telecommunications. Correct me if I say anything wrong, Scott. You're looking at me pretty intently, but no, that's okay. Anyway, we've talked about this multiple times in the past. I think are we down to we're the only city in the county not? Is there one other?
There's Mill Creek also.
Mill Creek is the other one that hasn't implemented this.
Holiday finally did.
Yeah.
It's about $350,000 a year in potential revenue. That's not insignificant over 3-year period. That's $1 million to our tax base. But anyway, so we've talked about this in the past. We pushed it off for a bit because of how busy we were in other items. So we're just here to bring this up again. Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you if you want to give better specifics or background than what I just did.
No, I think you did a good job, giving a good overview of it. As you can see, there's a Utah code 10-1 part 4. That's what authorizes a municipality to enact the tax if they so choose. The first that this was allowed was July 1st, 2004.
the current rate, maximum rate is 3.5%, so you could do anything from, you know, anything less than that, 0 to 3.5%. Currently, all the cities who enact the rate do it at the 3.5% rate. Kind of the thought being, if you're gonna do it, you might as well just do it. Right. Throughout the state, there's over 150 cities that charge the telecom tax. Again, Cottonwood Heights and Mill Creek are the two cities that are not charging it. You cannot charge it in the unincorporated areas or the township areas. They're not considered a full-fledged municipality, and this is a municipal tax that's allowed. So in those areas, it's not allowed. The collection amounts would probably reduce over time, similar to our cable TV collections reduce over time, as there's a separation of data versus telecom. Kind of like on cable TV, there's a separation of data versus true cable TV. And so as that happens over time, and as people like turn off their home phones and go more to cell phones and different things like that, and everything, and with your cell phone, how that's differentiated again, like between the phone portion and the data portion, it's likely that the amount will continue to reduce a little bit. It's not like that it halved or anything like that, but it is a declining type of a charge, I would say, because the base is just in a decline, where data is becoming the higher area of the bills that are associated with this type of tax. In order to implement the tax, you have to give notice to the state tax commission, so the state tax commission can give notice to the vendors that provide the services. And they require a 90-day window for them to receive that notification so they can get the word out there. So for instance, if we wanted to implement the tax on January 1st, we could not do that because we're too close to that date. We could, and you have to do it on a quarter start. So that's January 1, April 1, July 1, or October 1. Those are the times when you can implement the tax. So if you wanted to implement the tax, the earliest possibility, if you decided today, yeah, we want to go ahead and do that, would be implementing the tax on April 1 of 2024. And you would need between now and that period of time, adopt an ordinance to outline the intent of the city to charge the tax. Then we would need to send a letter to the state tax commission with that ordinance with it, you know, outlining them our instructions for them to do it. And then they could go down the process that they do. They send out a list of all the different taxes that have changed so that all the different vendors can look through it, make sure that they're in compliance with it, and if they need to do anything on their end to do it, and then they start to do that. There is a slight collection fee that is charged by the state tax commission. It could be up to 1.5% of the fee collected. It's currently been about 0.65% of the fee that's collected.
Does the $300,000 of projected tax revenues take that into consideration, that it's 0.65 and it may go up to
0.65% is less than 0.5%.
I know, but if it goes up to 1 point.
Well, even if it goes up to 1.5% on 300,000, you're talking about maybe.
No, I thought it was a percentage that it says here that it's a percentage.
Yes.
The point,
So on 300,000, you'd be talking $4,500.
Oh, so it's not the difference that if we impose a 3.5%, they get 0.65 of they get.
Yes.
Oh, it's a
0.65 of the percentage, so there's
Oh,
no, I was gonna ask that
Yeah.
clarifying question.
Okay.
too,
Sorry, I
Because
wasn't
that's
clear
a
on that
huge,
part. Yes.
huge.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if
it's
they
very-
get half
yeah,
of
it's
what
a
they.
very minuscule amount that they
Okay.
can charge.
Okay.
Currently, they charge a very, very minor amount of that 0.65% of the collection portion, not of the base. So it's really kind of minuscule. And I don't know how true that this is at number 4, but if you assume that a line of service costs $40 a month, and maybe half of that is telephone and half of that is data. If you did a 3.5% applied on that $20, that would be about 70 cents a month. And annually, it would be about $8.40. That may or may not hold true depending on the plan that you have. It could be much less than that. It just depends on how, you know, your plan is set up and different things. And we don't have all the base data to be able to figure that out. So trying to say, oh yeah, it's gonna definitely generate 300,000. That's a guesstimate, not even an estimate, because we don't know what the details are of the amounts charged to, residents and businesses here in the city. It's a total guesstimate, so.
Scott, we've already done a public hearing on this, correct? Or we have to do another one?
I don't remember if we did a public hearing. I can't remember.
With the budget last year, that
It was
that
this year. When we were,
last budget year. You're right, this year.
yeah, I think it was, I don't remember the month, but we actually had it on the schedule to even vote for and we pulled it. But we had a public hearing
I think that might be
I think
right.
that's
the
correct.
before. So I'm wondering if that would need to happen again.
Probably gonna be safest to have a fresh one, just politically at least, so. I can
I
look at that if that's an issue, but,
Okay.
I think public hearings do go stale after a while.
It certainly looks better.
Yeah.
If you do it again. That's how we did it 6 months ago.
But the really good thing is all I'll have to do is pull out the ordinance I drafted in about December of 2004. Imposing this tax, change a few dates, and there you go.
Interesting. Well, yeah, let's talk about it for a second as the council. What are your thoughts?
I was one of the two that, I thought it made sense. Scott commented, the original basis for this whole theory on this fee was everybody had a telephone in their house and everybody got it from La Belle or whoever. And they paid the franchise fees to have access, and that was something that the city used to do that. Obviously, in the last 20 years, especially, things have changed quite a bit. I don't expect that any of my children are ever gonna have a landline. I only have one because I'm keeping the phone number in reserve for number 5 when he gets old enough to have his own phone. That part of the cable bill is declining. This would kind of replace that for a while until whatever they decide to come out. So it's something that's why I think most larger cities have it. I think when we did, before Mill Creek was even incorporated, we did an analysis and we were the only city over 10,000 population in the state that had not done it. So now it's probably us and Mill Creek. Holiday may have, I don't remember where they were.
Holiday
I think there weren't very many. As far as timing, I think it would make some sense if we did it sooner to get it decided before the end of this year, so you can do the 90 days. It would probably help Scott in his budgeting if they could at least get one collection before the final budget was approved. Or you may be fine with just the guesstimate and doing it on the budget year. That will be up to how you want to do, but that would be my only point on timing.
Councilman Noel, anything?
Yeah, I'll add to my position last time that, I don't wanna. I look into the future, I look at our budget, I look at the expenditures that we're having on our cost of doing business is rising. And I don't see this as being a heavy burden, semblance of a tax for our residents. And I'm a real advocate for keeping our taxes down, but we have to also be conscious of the things that we want to do, such as our traffic mitigation and things like that, where we're gonna need revenue to be able to perform these other tasks. So for me, I'm still an advocate of this. I think we still need to have that conversation about, all the parameters to get full clarity and transparency for our residents. I don't want to get into raising property taxes and doing that stuff on a regular basis, even though we're, realistically still a little bit behind there, but we're doing our best, I think, as a city to mitigate the increase in taxes here. And I want to stay with that, but I see this as an opportunity to help us to minimize some of the costs that we're seeing here in the future.
Yeah, especially inflation wise.
Exactly.
Councilor Burrell, anything you want to add?
Well, I think I might have had a misconception when I made my comments at the last time we deliberated on this, because I was thinking that telecom tax did pertain to a portion of every smartphone, but I'm incorrect on that.
No, lands and cell
So
phone.
both a land phone and a smartphone.
This doesn't pertain to the data portion of your mobile phone
Bill. Got it.
Or the cable.
Or the
data part.
cable,
It'd be the-
Right,
it's
so,
transactions for
you know, depending what's the average number per, of people per household in Cottonwood Heights? Is it an average of 2.5 to about 2.5?
2.5.
So if every single human, even a lot of children, carry a smartphone, so we're talking about 70 cents times 2.5 per household. When I think of taxes and the tax burden, I usually think of it in term of households. So if two senior people are living on a fixed income and they each have a smartphone and they have a landline because they're old school. I gave up my landline 20 years ago, but a lot of people still have, so they have a landline, then they each carry a smartphone. So is just shy of $3 per household a burden? You know, it doesn't seem like it to most of us. So I still have mixed feelings on it. But the other problem I have is that we currently have a policy that we do not use general funds for improving our safety for active transportation. So we'd have to look at changing the way we
But we
look at that.
we do fund public works and those things from the general fund. every
Right,
year.
which are for
That's part of the
they're
budget
for
process.
maintaining roadways for the benefit of cars is what we currently use general funds
That's
for.
all of the things that go into public works are funded. Some are class B and C, but a lot of it does come from general fund.
So I'm not adamantly opposed. I do think this hits every single household. I'm generally not in favor of additional taxes that,
If it's 70
Affect the
cents
average
for 2.5
person.
people per household, that's about $1.75 a month. There are those who can't, there are certainly those who can. And it does go to, and you can, I believe West Jordan actually targeted theirs. They funneled it. I mean, 350 could almost, it doesn't quite, but could fund a portion of a traffic unit. Or it could.
I would
fund a
definitely jump
a
right.
specific, if that makes it more palatable, you can say, okay, we're gonna take 2% of it, and that's gonna go solely for X.
Yeah.
That's certainly part of the discussion that could be had.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would certainly support it right now on the spot if this roughly $300,000 went toward the facilities that we need to make our roadways safer. I'd be on it.
So yeah, fascinating discussion. So let me tell you where I am. There's obviously benefits. This isn't. We take every penny collected. I've used the word sacred. It's a sacred responsibility we have as we determine what gets collected from residents. If this could help push off a property tax increase for, even a year, there's a cost saving that's there. I'll tell you where I feel. If I were the third vote to move forward, I would probably not go forward, and I'll tell you why. I think to initiate this tax, I would feel comfortable. I'd really look to have a majority. To have a consensus, rather, to have 5 people willing to on the council, representing their district to move forward. If I was the third vote, I wouldn't move forward with it. So if there's 3 to move forward with it, we would go that. Then it wouldn't matter what I said, if that makes sense. So maybe that's a
oh,
little.
come on, some of the people.
Scott, yeah. Anyway,
I don't dislike the idea of targeting some of it. I don't know that I do 100%, maybe, but certainly if we wanted to say, 50% of this is going to go towards street improvements, to help us with pedestrians or just improvements, fixing potholes faster, whatever. I don't have a problem with making that designation. That seems to make sense. But we do also have the inflationary pressures, as everyone else does. We have, you look at the numbers of what just cost of living and those things for our employees, for the people who provide all these services are, it adds up really, really fast.
So let's do this. I'd really like to have Councilmember Holton. And let me say it this way, a full council, before we make the decision, if that's okay. So let's, I think it's been a positive discussion though, and we'll.
Anything we would need to know to bring it back for next time to,
Yeah, do you want to bring it back next time?
Yeah, we bring it back
Put it
next
in the
time.
retreat?
We'll
Okay.
bring it back next time.
Okay.
So just, yeah, knowing that there'd be a,
and maybe just from what Ellen had said, maybe we can communicate with who would, I guess, Tim, if there's a possible way, if you want. Do you like the idea of targeting some, or would you rather just keep it general?
I do like the idea of targeting a portion, and especially to street safety. You know, Councilwoman, Member Burrell has talked about that grant that's available for safe streets and so forth.
There may be
This may
matching
be,
needs.
yeah, this may be a way to be able to.
Speed signs, RFD things, those cost money. And if that gets us
They do,
there,
they do.
they work really well. So maybe Scott have to do a little bit else, what kind of amount, what kind of things we could do if we had an extra X number of dollars.
Yeah.
That would be,
Yeah, we talked about raised intersections, things like that,
yeah, something like that at data. That's
just,
but again, if you have
some funding for it.
funding for it, those things can happen.
yeah, no, perfect. Thank you all. I appreciate that. So we've got one more item to discuss before we move on to our next meeting. But so then it's item E, which is a traffic calming discussion specific to Fort Union, I guess, that from the previous meeting. So let's I'll have our city manager Tim Tingy start, and I know we can have our city engineer Matt Ship add on to it, but.
Yeah, so I included a memo, or a memo was included in your packet related to this. You remember in the retreat, we had a conversation about traffic calming. I wanted to state, I think I sent an email to all of you. I had put in the memo that was traffic calming and safety master plan at the retreat. It was actually traffic calming and sidewalk study project that we had proposed. So I wanted to clarify that it wasn't the safety master plan. Appreciate Councilmember Burrell bringing that up, and I communicated that to you. But in the retreat, we talked about having a consultant or getting a consultant involved in really doing a comprehensive study of traffic calming. And Matt can talk a little bit about that, but we want to get direction from you on whether you want us to pursue something like that, because it could really help us understand comprehensively what is needed for traffic calming in the city. The other thing, that there was a question about speed bumps, even looking at temporary speed bumps. Not recently, but over the past several years, we have not implemented speed bumps. There's too many issues of concern that we have with speed bumps. Probably the primary one is for our public safety, our police officers and fire department, emergency services having to go through speed bumps and the wear and tear on vehicles, but more importantly, the reduction in time to respond to emergencies, which is such a huge issue for our residents. So we have not implemented speed bumps for a number of years. We do have speed bumps. They were implemented before, but over the recent years, we have not implemented those at all. We've looked at other means. So we wanted to have some conversations. There are temporary measures that you can look at with speed bumps. We still wouldn't recommend it, and Matt can talk about them. In fact, we were watching, there's a video of an area where it was a news video, not news video, it was a newscast, a news story, not in Utah, but in a similar community as ours. And there were a lot of residents that were concerned by putting in speed bumps that were temporary, like rubber. And what was happening is the snow plows were tearing them up, and then they were causing other issues. But we can look at a lot of different things. I'm going to let Matt kind of talk about what options we could look at, but really what we want is your direction on what to do related to, if you want us to really look at this traffic calming consultant process. We can even bring it to you for the retreat for discussion. as well, but I'll let Matt just talk about some of the thoughts on that and then other traffic calming options.
Okay, just by way of the study, if you will, or staff, I am recommending that we move forward with something. One of the biggest problems we run into, or I run into in the engineering and public works, is I get requests probably on a weekly basis to do speed studies. And one of the issues we have there is we can go out and measure speeds, but we don't have a budget to do anything about these things if it does come about. The other issue is we run into, if let's say we do find things like I gotta tell you, and the chief or his officers and myself and my staff could probably show you all the areas where we have major concerns. But the question is, how do we prioritize those concerns? Without even doing these types of studies, how do we prioritize those concerns? And the study itself and the plans that we would put together try to make it as objective as possible for you as a council to have a tool that you can use when it comes to your annual budget allocations. We've talked about using earmarking money, if you will, for different projects. If we have these projects outlined and they're laid out, then we can start utilizing that earmarked money, very similar to the stormwater system that we have. We earmark the funds for that, and we use those funds for that. They don't go anywhere else but into the stormwater. If we have monies earmarked for pedestrian safety, or alternative transportation safety, those things, we can utilize that. But the question is, how do you prioritize it? I mean, we're split into districts. And so therefore, as a district, every district is important it's the number one priority, right? So we have to somehow try to figure that out. So I would recommend we do this study, and I am working to put together a request for proposal that I would like to bring to the council at the retreat and have you look at that and see if that meets the expectations you have of what this would do, so that we can have that input. Mike and I actually just met today with the PTOS subcommittee. They are the sorry, I said alternative. Sorry, I apologize. The active transportation subcommittee, and we've started speaking with them about coming up with some ideas to put into the overall plan. And they plan to present something to the council in the next few weeks of an idea they have. And I think it's a great idea. I don't want to steal their thunder, and I'm not going to, but they're going to bring something forward that it's a low hanging fruit, which will add a lot of benefit to the city. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm recommending, that we bring that forward. There's different types of treatments for traffic calming and pedestrian and active transportation safety. There is a menu item of those. They range anywhere from, $10 a candlestick pole, all the way up to, hundreds of thousands of dollars of road dieting, if you will, to do things. So there's a myriad of things out there. And I think we just need to be not consistent, but we need to look at each one of these projects as the council. You can have that ability to make those decisions. So that's my pitch for that. And I'm going to leave it at that and let y'all have the discussion you'd like to have. And like I said, I'm developing the request for proposals, the request for qualifications from firms to help us. And in that, I know that our volunteers in our city are wonderful. I think they're great. And part of that proposal is using our volunteers, our PTOS committee, our group, in developing the plan once we've determined what we're aiming for, so we can get that out. So I want to kind of integrate the two and try to bring that together. And so that's my pitch, and I'll sit back and I'll take your answer off the phone.
Thoughts, Matt, on we talked specific to Danish Road before about temporary the temporary speed bumps, would you not be in favor of those?
I will be honest with you, I'm not in favor of them. I've used them. During winter conditions, not saying they do 100% come apart, but the snow plows will catch the corners and pop those up. They come in sections, they're pieces, and they can pop them up. And some of those, it's a hard plastic, if you will. And if it's popped up, there are cases where tires are shredded. They'll catch the corner and the sidewall will get ripped. It's not 100% guaranteed it'll happen, but they do become a maintenance issue. But if we want to try them, if you will, during a summer condition to see what it does, I mean, we certainly can, but we have as a city council and as a city, we have not leaned towards, and we've avoided speed bumps because of some of the other issues that do involve those. Do you put in enough? Do you put in the right kind? There are situations, they do slow traffic down, but they also, in some cases, will increase speeds between speed bumps. Noises do increase. I was at one of my previous lives. I put in a neighborhood of speed bumps after being demanded that they went in. Once they went in, they were in for a year. The petition came in demanding they get taken out. People driving around them, going up on the sidewalks, going through driveways. Some of their teenage kids launching their cars over them. So there's positives. There's also the negatives that go along with it. So I will certainly work in the direction you would like to go. But I'm not saying they're the ultimate answer. I think the ultimate answer is looking at the overall design picture of these roads and how we can implement some of these other ideas that would definitely cause the slowing.
This is one where I do actually have some answers. And when I speak, I want everyone to be clear that the data I'm giving you doesn't come from a study off somewhere else. It comes from data that I took in Cottonwood Heights, specifically for my master's research project that engineering did in town. That's why there's a couple times I'll say what they found from speed bumps, and this was is there, and I can never came up with a good area or a good name for it, but it's kind of what's their area of influence, how much before a speed bump, how much after an influence. After speed bump, has your speed actually changed? If you were going 26 before, when do you get to 26 after? And the answer really surprised me. It's about 125 feet. That's basically most people's front yard. So 1.5 houses between those is where you're back to where you were. Okay, that's why when Matt says, if you put in not quite enough, you can get your speeds where they're slow, they're the 21, 22 miles an hour over a speed bump like they should be, but you feel like you've been slowed down. So you speed up to maybe you're going 30, 32 between them, and then you slow down. So instead of having a consistent speed through the neighborhood, you have this wave effect, which is actually, in my opinion, more dangerous. That's also how I found out that a rolling stop, an unwarranted stop sign, which we've removed a couple, is 11 miles an hour. I thought that was outrageous until I started looking at it really carefully, and it's that. So you need to be careful. The speed signs that we've got those tend to work a long time, and really they remind people, and most people comply. Correct types of speed bumps is something I hear very regularly down on 23, 25 is you put the wrong kind in. We want them like on Danish. The Danish ones may be an inch deeper. They're not much more because you can't really go that much more. But what we put in was according to the rules, the MUTCD at the time. And you can, I mean, if you can go very fast across there. The reality is most people are doing the 21, 22 miles an hour over those. And I have spent hours, literally, with a gun, with a radar, measuring that across those types of things. So I concur, I'm not a big fan of speed bumps. I am a fan of speed signs. We've done other traffic calming things that have worked surprisingly well. When we found an issue, and the reality is you don't find as many issues as you hear about. Because the perception, everyone's perception, it's very real, is what's happening on their street in their front yard is usually higher speeds than what really is occurring. And that's a public perception. It's real. Everybody has it. Even trained officers who know how fast that car's supposed to be coming when they're in their front yard will sometimes overestimate it. We've done bike striping lanes down Park Ridge, down 6710 east of 23rd East, I think. And that actually slowed that 85th percentile down a mile and a half per hour, which brought it well within compliance. Some things like that really do work. The thing, if one other thing that they may want to do is look at our traffic calming manual. We redid that in 13, 14. It may be worth looking at. You may want to have the engineers look at that. It's a little stringent, but we used to have a $25,000 budget item just for traffic calming things that came up, to pay for traffic things, to put those in there. Part of it probably should be education, because again, that perception of what's going on in the neighborhood. Last argument I had on my sign was, well, you have the sign in your neighborhood that's slowing down cars, so you're not getting an accurate data set. And I was like, the whole point of the sign is to slow down cars. That's what it is. So I disagreed that we weren't getting an accurate, because they were looking to have a problem be worse than it actually is, and not what the problem actually was. And that would be my caution going forward to everyone. If you do have the consultant come and you start getting back this data, that you have to actually look at it and believe it.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a no-brainer, but when the emotions get involved, a specific area gets involved, when an accident occurs, it's really easy to, well, you're getting bad data because you didn't take it in the right place, or you did this. It's really easy to dismiss what they're doing and go on just the emotion, but you get a lot better results if you do things based on what's one of the reasons last week we had that discussion of what are we going to do. Let's find out what's going on Fort Union for real. But we also have to, once we get the data, we have to believe it.
Yeah. Let's go to Councilmember Brill. We're about 6-7 minutes from a notice meeting. I know you have some things you want to go over those.
Thank you. Well, I think that I really appreciate that our Public Works Director is bringing this forward, along with our city manager. And I think that I'm so thankful that we have an active transportation committee who can look at the work that staff has already done related to active transportation. And I would like to see this request for proposal include specific elements that I think the council has to decide what are our priorities. For instance, a year ago, the mayor and I sat and talked about neighborhood byways, and there was enthusiasm around that. And I think that my understanding is that the subcommittee has prioritized a specific singular neighborhood byway that they'd like to do as a pilot project. So if we think to ourselves where we need to direct this consulting firm as to what our priorities are, so we could consider that priorities might include identifying neighborhood byways. Maybe there's 10 neighborhood byways that allow both people walking or rolling to be able to get across the city to certain amenity areas, or to get out of our city to go on more longer regional walks, or it's usually cycling. And do we prioritize safe routes to school? Because right now, really, we have these 20-mile-an-hour zones that are just immediate to any given school. Is that really adequate? I know I've been working with a resident and with Canyon School District to try to get to an understanding of where do students walk to get to elementary schools versus middle to our high school, or if they live far enough away, what routes are they walking or scootering on to get to their bus stop? So could we, for instance, say to the consulting firm, okay, we want this to be prioritized based on neighborhood byways and on safe routes to school. A given neighborhood byway might include where children are trying to get to their elementary, middle, or high school. I also believe that we should be thinking in a phased in manner. There's things that have absolute immediacy that we need to make where you cross on a neighborhood byway, where you're going to cross a collector or arterial. So having a basic prioritization pattern in our mind that then we can pass off to the consulting firm as they analyze our city. So again, my key elements that I think we need to consider: neighborhood byways, safe routes to school, phasing in based on prioritization, and ultimately getting eventually to some complete streets in Cottonwood Heights. And along these lines, I'll say this ever so briefly, but at the last council meeting, I talked about immediate measures we can take since we continue to have problems on Fort Union Boulevard around two of our key crosswalks, one near Mount View Park and a crosswalk near Bella Vista. This is a sample of some features that were put on Bengal Boulevard. If you've driven Bengal Boulevard lately, it's located just, what would that be, approximately, well, it's near where Danish Road intersects with Bengal. And these were put up related to a road construction project, and they were up for at least, I don't know, it seemed like 10 days, I'm guessing off the top of my head. They were just taken down today.
They put it back up this morning.
But my point is, these kind of visuals, and they should exist, and maybe not, this close together, but something that lets the motorist, as they are approaching, perhaps it's 100 yards or more from the crosswalk, but a visual that says to the motorist, I think I'm supposed to have extra caution. We could be doing that immediately near these two crosswalks. Again, not at the crosswalk. You do this to slow motorists down before they get anywhere near. It's not only to slow them down, but in their mind, they're thinking, oh, this is cautionary. I need to perceive I'm coming into a place that I need to be more cautious. I think there's many of us in the community that really would like to see the city take some immediate action with Fort Union Boulevard, so that we can really begin to get the drivers, especially again, as they approach, whether it's from the east or the west, these critical crosswalks, really thinking, I need to be slower and more cautious.
Thank you, Councilmember Rowe. Councilmember Newell, anything you want to add?
No, I have residents that dealing with these speed bumps on a regular basis. And Matt actually covered a lot of the complaints that they have. People speeding over them, the loud noises coming from people not taking their time to go over the speed bumps. Also, the rerouting of people to avoid that street on purpose and increasing traffic on some of the other, so on the one side street, just so they only have to go over one speed bump. So those type of issues have come up a number of times from the residents, and that I really get concerned about, because I'm a miser and I'm cheap part bird, so cheap, is the impact on our snowmobile, snow removal. That just, I can see that becoming a heavy burden for us for doing things like that, and I don't really the idea of paying for something that we're gonna have to buy over and over again, as in a rubberized speed bump. That to me would become a cost again to the city. So I'm just about limiting the cost, but I think you know, we talked about earlier about some ways to add some funding and available, making funding available to be able to make these improvements that we're talking about in other ways.
So I think we have a majority, unless I hear otherwise, to move forward with an RFP for the
Yeah.
for the retreat. Any objection to that? And they will do that.
Thank you.
So thank you. Appreciate that discussion. Let's the last item before we adjourn this meeting is just a review of calendars and upcoming events. November 24th through December 7th is the holiday decorating contest. November 27th is the Light the Heights at City Hall. I will be on a beach in Mexico. Maybe our Mayor Pro Tem can be helping us light the Christmas tree. And then anyway, we do not have anything to discuss.
I know who's actually in charge of that, so I'll be fine.
Okay.
It ain't me.
Yeah, and will help. So we don't have a closed meeting scheduled for today, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn our work session and enter into our CDRA meeting immediately.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed. Thank you.